Good morning. Thank you for coming out on our first sunny day in a long time. I'm sure you were tempted to go to the beach or something, so we're glad to see you. Welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Emerald Coast. I'm Amanda Pyburn, a member of this fellowship and your service leader this morning. We have quite a few visitors today, so welcome. You can learn more about us at our website, uufec.com. We have no required creed to join. Instead, we value free exploration, looking for our own path. And we do all commit to the UU principles that are listed on the back of your order of service. Announcements are also listed here, as well as in the weekly e-news. If you're not getting the e-news yet, let us know and we'll try to get you on the list. There are a few things we need to particularly look at, some exciting things and some goofs in the announcements. First of all, it says after the service we're going to welcome our new members with snacks. That was last week, so ignore that one. But the rest of it is exciting new things. After 2.5 years now, we are finally starting next week our second hour small group discussion program. We call it second hour. This is first hour, next comes second hour. There are a lot of different topics and they rotate. So next week starts with 2 TED Talks and Pagan Pathways. There is childcare. The RE leaders will have great activities for your kids. Some weeks there will be 3. And feel free to kind of rotate among them week upon week. You don't have to just belong to one. You can pick each week which one appeals to you and which topic you want to do. So we're very excited about that. Also, because we're going to be hungry when we go to second hour, snacks are starting next week as well. And the way we do this, we've got a schedule by your last name. So I'm a P, therefore I would bring snack on any third Sunday. It's, of course, optional. Don't feel pressured. Some people like to bake. Some people want to pick something up at the store. Makes no difference. We have sweet and savory, just something to munch on so we're not starving during second hour. And the coffee will be back too, so that's wonderful. And then as if that wasn't enough, third great thing, the choir is starting back up again. You've been staring at empty chairs for quite a while now. It doesn't start until the following week, September 11th, and it is going to be twice a month during second hour for rehearsals, which is new now. So that way we have childcare, and we're hoping to gather some new young singers. We surely need more singers. So if you like to sing, you don't have to read music, just come give us a try, see what it's like. You always can change your mind later, but you might want to try it once. We do also rehearse briefly before the service, just to go over that day's hymns. But if you can't come before the service, you can only come second hour. Don't let that stop you from trying us out, because we can always use voices. So I think that covers all the new things. Oh, and then our Reverend Ruth has an online UU 101 class. So if you're interested in learning more about Unitarian Universalism, you might want to try that out. A lot of things coming up as we get really ramped up for this new year. And now our prelude prepares us for the service. Chalice for us. Fire consumes and casts a bright light. May our chalice flame consume our regrets for the past, our fears about the future, and our worries about today. May it light for us a path of joy and peace. Our opening hymn is in the newer teal hymnal. The words will also be projected up front. It's called When I Am Frightened, and it's fairly new to us. So Cecile is going to play the melody through once first so we can get it in our heads before we start to sing. Children are welcome to come forward for the time for all ages. Hello, hello. Does anybody like to be tickled? Well, there you go. I thought you were all going to say yes, and I was going to say no. Yeah, kind of is often true, too. Sometimes we like something a little bit, but we don't like it a lot. Like you may have had someone who wouldn't stop tickling you when you told them to, and that can be really annoying. So we kind of have our own personal space, and there are things that we like people to do with us and things we don't like them to do with us. This book is about a boy who doesn't like hugging. It's called Don't Hug Doug. It's just not my thing, he says. He doesn't like it. You can hug a pug, kind of dog. Aw. You can hug a bug, maybe. Or a slug, ew. But don't hug Doug. He doesn't like it. No hugs, please. You can hug a valentine. Sweet. Or a porcupine, but not recommended. Or a Frankenstein. Urgh. But don't hug Doug. He doesn't like it. Seriously, no hugs. I like, though, the way he says these things with a smile on his face. It's not like he's mad. He's just letting you know what he likes and he doesn't like. Don't worry, Doug likes you. He just doesn't like hugs. Doug thinks hugs are too squeezy, too squishy, too squashy, too smooshy. There are lots of things Doug does like. He likes to sort his rock collection and try on his sock collection and draw with his chalk collection. And he really likes harmonica bands. Squeak! But he doesn't like hugs. So no matter how huggable he looks, and he does look pretty cute and huggable, huh? No matter how much you want to, even if it's his birthday, please don't hug Doug. I'm just not a hugger. What about hello hugs? No, but look what he did instead. You could shake hands. You can have an alternative. What about goodbye hugs? Nope. But what did they do instead? Do you see? Fist bump, yeah? What about game-winning home run hugs? You know how they all pile in together? What about dropped ice cream cone hugs? Still no, but I would love another scoop. There's only one kind of hug Doug does like. He likes a not squeezy, not squashy, not squishy, not smooshy, just right bedtime hug from his mom. Is it bedtime? No. Are you Doug's mom? You're not. So don't hug Doug. Thanks, but no thanks. Could you hug these people? Doug's best friend Finn, Grandma McQuinn, an identical twin, this kid? There's only one way to find out. What is it? Ask. You have to ask them. Can I hug you? Not now. Gotta roll. Can I hug you, Grandma? Yes. I've always loved hugs, and I always will. Can I hug you? And look at those twins. One says yes, one says no. They're different. How about the baby? Gabu-ba-gabu. That means yes. Babies usually like it, but not always. Can you hug Doug's pet pot-bellied pig? Ask. Can we hug your pet pot-bellied pig? Yes, she loves hugs, but be gentle. She's a little scared of strangers. You know, you may run into dogs and cats when you're outside, and you have to ask their owner before you touch them, right? Because sometimes they like it and sometimes they bite. Some people love hugs, but lots of people don't. And lots of people are somewhere in the middle, like you guys with tickling. Who here likes hugs? I do, me too. I'd love a hug right now. I love hugs. I don't, me neither. Never have. Hugs? Ugh. Sometimes from certain people. When I'm sad, on Tuesdays. So, can you hug Doug? No, he doesn't like it. Oh, nay, Uggs, hey. You know what that is? It is. If you don't know how to do that, ask somebody, because it's... I don't know. I bet kids everywhere still like doing it. But he does like you, and he likes high fives instead of hugs. Look at all the different kinds. Doug is a master of high fives. Straight five, double five, low five, side five, spinny five. Have you ever done that? Elbow five. We did that sometimes. Jump five, granny five, piggy five, puppy five, Franken five. He even has a high five for you. So go ahead, ask. Hey, Doug, high five? There you go. Whoa. So even though we have our own personal space, sometimes we like people in it, sometimes we don't. And the only way to find out is to ask. And of course, if they say no, then you have to respect that too, right? Okay. You know, I don't know him. You'll have to tell me about him later. I see. All right, thanks for listening. invited to briefly share any joys or concerns you may have so we may support and celebrate together. You may choose to silently place a pebble into the water or to share briefly at the mic. This is a sacred time for us. All those things we've kept in our hearts and chosen not to say out loud today. As we enter a time of silent meditation or prayer, I'd like to share a couple of quotes. The first, don't be ashamed of your story. It will inspire others. And the second, a strong woman stands up for herself. A stronger woman stands up for everyone else. After our silence, I'll close us with a chime. After our song of dedication, we'll take up the offering. Any cash or undesignated checks today will be split with our, I have our September share the plate recipient, but it's not September yet, is it? Well, let me check. Oh, I think I wrote that wrong. It is Niceville Sharing and Caring. Next week is going to be Youth Village. But today we're splitting all cash and undesignated checks with Niceville Sharing and Caring. Please be generous.
She never slows down. She doesn't know why, but she knows that when she's all alone, feels like it's all coming down. She won't turn around.
She was homeschooled through most of her education, but now holds 2 associate degrees, one in veterinary technology and another in meteorology, and is currently pursuing a bachelor's in psychology through Arizona State. She enlisted in the Air Force at age 24, which after many travels brought her here to Eglin in November of 2020. Her primary military career is weather forecasting, but she's taking a 6-month break to assist in the Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Office as the non-commissioned officer in charge. She asks that you note that all statements made this morning are reflections of her personal beliefs and should not be construed as the official position of the U.S. military. Melissa.
Good morning. I just want to, I'm not looking through the microphone anymore. I just want to share with you guys a little bit about what I do in the Sexual Assault Prevention and Response Office, which is abbreviated as SAPR. So when I say SAPR, I'm talking about Sexual Assault Office. So what do I do and what does that look like? It varies day to day. We have a number of roles and responsibilities to include educating the population, which in my case is responsible for about 80,000 personnel, about both their prevention roles and responsibilities, as well as what resources are available to them in the event the worst happens. As part of that, I am certified by the DSAC-P program, which is the DoD's Sexual Assault Advocate Credentialing Program. It's the Department of Defense version of the National Advocate Credentialing Program. So that enables me to have confidentiality when a victim comes and shares their story with me. I don't have to then go and talk to law enforcement. I can hear their story and provide direct support to them. Some of the things that we talk about a lot in the more recent years with military members when I'm doing this education is some of the gender bias. Typically when we talk about sexual assault, you'll hear scenarios where we say he assaulted her, and most of the scenarios are like that, as far as when we talk in hypotheticals. But the truth of the matter is that genders of the full spectrum can be on both the offender and the victim side. And statistically speaking, 1 in 6 men over the course of their life will experience sexual violence. So statistically speaking, there are multiple men in this audience right now who either have been or will be victims of sexual violence at some point in their lives. So I just want to bring a little attention to that. In the fallout of sexual assault, there's a long, drawn-out process, and it's very different from case-by-case basis. I have been doing this for a while now. I've actually been volunteering with the SAPR office for over 2 years now, and no 2 cases are ever the same. They're always different. The offenders are always very different. The case, how it happens, and even how it plays out in the legal process is very, very different. It's very difficult to make generalizing statements about the process. And part of the reason for that is that trauma affects each person differently. We can list a number of things that people experience as part of their trauma, things that are common statistically, things like PTSD, suicidal ideation, dissociation, where they almost feel separate from their bodies and from the world around them and what they're experiencing. Sleep disorders, nightmares, trouble falling asleep, staying asleep, feeling unsafe in their own homes and in their own beds. These things can lead to other things that are traumatic, things like self-harm. And by self-harm, I don't just mean cutting yourself with a knife. These victims experience a broad range, everything from self-sabotage at work, where they're sabotaging their relationships, to, oh, my brain just blanked on the word. I have it written down, I'm sure. Disordered eating, that's what I was thinking of. Disordered eating, a full spectrum there. It can even be over-exercising, substance abuse, high-risk sexual behavior. A lot of times they try to reestablish control in their lives and take back that portion of their life, but in the process they tend to take risks that they wouldn't otherwise have taken. Other things that you see are compulsive shopping, gambling, emotional instability, just in general, where they find themselves bursting out in tears or having irritable, angry outbursts where they don't even know why they're angry in that moment. And then, of course, there's the self-blame. Why didn't I fight back? Or why was I not emphatic enough when I said no? Did I forget to say no? Did I imply consent? These are all questions that a lot of victims struggle with in the fallout. And of course, it's never the victim's fault. It's always, somebody else made that choice to do that to them. Whatever the extenuating circumstances leading up, it's always that offender's choice and fault. It's never the victim's fault. So with all of that background, you may ask, how can I help? How can I be part of the solution? And of course, there's the don't be part of the problem suggestion, but taking it a bit deeper than that, what else can you do to help? Especially in this community. My experience primarily is with military victims of sexual assault, but as I mentioned before, 1 in 6 men, America-wide, worldwide, it's not just in the military, experience sexual violence at some point in their lives. 1 in 3 women experience sexual violence at some point in their lives. There's statistically quite a group of us in this room who either have or will experience something traumatic in that regard. And as we mentioned before, with things like emotional instability or self-sabotage, sometimes people, when they're experiencing trauma, don't ask for help in the kindest of ways or the most inviting of ways. And so, to me, the number one thing that you can do is to be trauma-informed. Know that when somebody's experienced something, and it doesn't even have to be just sexual assault, when somebody has experienced something traumatic in their lives, or when somebody's being unkind, or in your work centers, you see that person who maybe is showing up late, or struggling with self-care, and they're have a short fuse, understanding that they may have experienced something that they are dealing with, and that they are needing your kindness and your support. I'm taking a course in psychology for statistics this semester, so I'm going to probably drop a lot of statistics, so I apologize in advance. Bear with me. But I just find it really interesting. So a couple others that I want to share with you. Aside from sexual violence, every 11 minutes, someone in the U.S. dies by suicide. In a group of 20 people, any group of 20 people, in the last 2 weeks, at least one of those 20 people have contemplated suicide. Statistically, there are people in our group here with us today who have contemplated suicide in the last 2 weeks. What about domestic violence? 1 in every 4 women will experience domestic violence at some point in her lifetime. Again, statistically speaking, there are people in this room today, more than one, multiple, in this room today, who have experienced or will experience domestic violence at some point in their lives. Intimate partner violence affects people regardless of income. It knows no social group in that way. And it's estimated that anywhere between 3.3 million and 10 million children witness domestic violence annually. Sometimes kids are not asking for help in the kindest of ways either. Those are the ones when they're not listening or they're acting out. I truly believe that every person presents their best to you given the situations they've been in. And then one other thing I'd like to share too is that almost 25% of adults report binge drinking within the last month. And 6% of adults report heavy alcohol usage as a whole within the last month. So people are struggling. People in our own communities are struggling. And when you leave these doors, people in your work centers are struggling. People in your extended family are struggling. Even if you don't know who they are, statistically you know people who have experienced sexual violence or domestic violence or have contemplated suicide or are struggling with substance abuse. Everybody experiences something at some point in their lives, and we're not always the best at asking for help in the nicest of ways. So as a community, the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of the Emerald Coast, what do we do about it? And the short answer is just to be aware, to be present, to ask questions. And not nosy questions, but ask genuinely. When I see you and I say, "Good morning, how are you?" I'm genuinely asking, "How are you?" Not waiting for the, "Oh, I'm hunky-dory, let's carry on," but genuinely asking and being willing to hear those answers. Sometimes we can tell when somebody wants just the shallow answer. But when you have that presence to look somebody in the eye and give them your full attention and be willing to take the time that it takes. It's not a simple thing for somebody to share with you something that they've been through or something that they're struggling with. And for a lot of us too, we spend so much time asking everybody else how they're doing and being there and listening to everybody else. What if somebody asks you how you're doing? Are you willing to share with them what you're really struggling with and how you're doing? Because I know that I struggle with that. I spend so much time listening to other people that when somebody asks me, I'm like, "Oh yeah, I'm great, I'm good," But we do. We all have things we're struggling with. Some are big, some are small. You can have a person who experienced multiple sexual traumas and never develops PTSD. And you can have someone who wasn't raped, they were, had some sort of abusive sexual contact, and that person develops PTSD. Every single one of us reacts differently, and the presence of mind to be there for each person is what I think is most important. And then the next thing is to know when you're out of your league, when you're out of your depth. When someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I've been a victim of a traumatic experience, and I'm struggling with suicide and I need help." Of course, you want to be there to listen and support them. But you may not be equipped to guide them through the process of healing and recovery or accessing resources. That's why we have things like the SAPR program, for example. It's a non-clinical thing. I'm not a counselor. That's the goal someday. But right now I'm not a counselor, so when somebody comes to me and shares that they've experienced a traumatic event, of course I sit and I listen to them, but I can't give them advice on how to deal with it. All I can do is say, "I'm here for you, and these are the resources that I'm aware of that I know can help you." It might look like getting someone to see a counselor. It might look like getting them some legal assistance. It might look like getting them financial assistance. It might look like helping them find a safe place to stay. Statistically, in the military, our most at-risk population is the enlisted E4 and below, so the people who are living in the dorms. And when they experience something in the dorms, sometimes they don't feel comfortable staying there anymore. So we help them find someplace else where they can feel safe. And we can do things like that. You don't have to be a SAPR representative to do things like that for anybody who's experienced any kind of traumatic event. Being present, hearing what their needs are, and then helping them get a step beyond you. You don't have to be the expert. It's knowing where to find the expert and knowing what your limits are. Or maybe somebody's experienced a traumatic event that is too close to home for you, and you find it, well, triggering emotionally to hear what's gone on with them. Knowing those boundaries for yourself and establishing them, keeping them clear in your mind, and being willing to communicate that as much as you're willing to share. You don't necessarily have to share with somebody, yes, I've been a victim too, but sharing with them, it's okay to say, you know what, I don't know what to do. I don't know what the answer is. I don't know what to say when you're sharing these traumatic events. Those things are all acceptable and normal things. Being present and knowing when to let it move beyond you. The other thing we always tell people, especially with the cases of imminent threat to life, whether it's suicidal ideation, homicidal ideation, some people want revenge, you know, not to leave that person. And we call it a warm handoff. Whenever you're referring someone to a resource, we always try to go with them or bring the resource to them. Because if you just say, you know, here's a list of resources, have a great day, I'm good, my part's done, it's not very genuine or kind or helpful, really. It's much better to guide them through the process. A lot of times, too, victims won't realize, or survivors, won't realize even how much they're affected. They might think, you know what, I've reported it, I've made the documentation, I got the medical help, I'm good to go. And they go back on their life. And they don't even realize that they're experiencing PTSD or dissociating, or that they're sabotaging their relationships. Sometimes it takes that close, kind friend to say, you know what, I see these things happening. I see that when I call, you don't answer anymore. I see that when I ask you how you're doing, you don't look me in the eye and you give me a one-word answer and you look for an escape route. Sometimes it takes a community holding each other accountable for those things and saying, you know what, I see that you need help and I want to help you. And on the opposite side, when you're in a situation, it can be very difficult to accept that help. You go, you know what, yeah, I'm good, I'm fine. I'm not having any issues, I'm coping great. And then you look back a year later and you see, you know what, no, I was very unbalanced in that time. I did need help and I didn't know how to accept it. There's a huge pride, ego aspect that comes into play. When you've experienced something traumatic, a lot of times choices have been taken from you and you want to reestablish your control. That's why things like disordered eating have a much higher occurrence in persons who've experienced a traumatic event than those that haven't. Because with disordered eating, it tends to be about establishing control. This is the one thing in my life that I can control, so that's what I'm going to take care of. The last thing you can do as a community, beyond being aware, not perpetuating it yourself, and getting people to resources, being present, the last thing is to continue educating yourself about things like this. I didn't know until about a week ago that 1 in 20 adults contemplate suicide within the last 2 weeks. I didn't know that until last week. I didn't know how that in the space of 9 minutes, every 9 minutes, somebody somewhere in the United States experiences sexual violence. Every 9 minutes. By the time I'm done talking, somewhere in the United States, 2 to 3 people will have been or are being assaulted somewhere. Or that every 68 seconds, somebody dies of suicide. I didn't know that until recently. And until I sought out opportunities like volunteering with the SAPR office, I didn't know what I could do about it. And there's a lot of resources to learn more about how you can support people. There's one that we share a lot in the military community, but I want to share it with you as well, because you don't have to be part of the military to use this resource. It's called the DoD Safe Helpline. They have a website, they have an app, and they have chat rooms where they can connect victims with other victims. But even beyond that, we've had people use this resource when they were suicidal. But most importantly for you guys is they have online education programs. Takes about an hour. You can learn more about how you can support a victim who's working through the fallout. And there's a whole long list of them. There's RAIN and NOVA and a long list. So, I just think it's really important to be aware overall that this is happening in our community, people in our fellowship here, as well as everyone else that you deal with. Even if they don't share it with you, even if they never tell you. You may have a close friend who experienced something, and you've been friends for 20 years, and they never share it with you. And that's okay. Everybody has their boundaries, their limits of privacy that they might not feel comfortable sharing. But still, when they're lashing out, and they're irritable, or they're crying, and they're struggling, they're dealing with PTSD or suicidal ideation or substance abuse issues, having that awareness of mind to know that even if they're not sharing with you what their problem is, chances are they're struggling with something. And we can treat everybody with the kindness and dignity and respect that every person deserves, and that we can be there for each other. So, no, that's a bit short, but that's all I have. Thank you guys so much for letting me share with you.
It's a very important topic, and I'm sure if you wanted any specific websites or sources that you needed, I'm sure she could share them with you. Thank you very much. We're going to the big hymnal. Please stand as you're able for our final hymn, One More Step, number 168. In this coming week, may you do at least one thing to support the broken, to welcome the stranger, to celebrate what is worthy, to do the work of justice and love. Be strong, be connected, each day act, so you may be a little more whole. Please stay seated for the postlude.